Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Yana Johnson, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Gordon Pert. We warmly welcome the family of Captain Justin Way Skipper, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of 236 Army Cadet Unit. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they love, and here we guard the record, which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Captain Justin Way Skipper. Justin Skipper was born in Adelaide on the 3rd of May 1914, the second son of Stanley and Kathleen Skipper. His father, Stanley, was a barrister and founder of the Commonwealth Club in Australia, and had enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force late in the First World War, saying that although it was unsound for a nation to send its married men to war, when the single men would not come forward, there was no excuse. Stanley added, he was making no sacrifice. It was his wife and children who were making the sacrifice. Lieutenant Stanley Skipper served as a repatriation officer on the Salisbury Plain and took an important role in the repatriation of the Australian Imperial Force in 1919. Justin Skipper attended St. Peter's College in Adelaide, where he was a notable athlete in intercollegiate competitions with Prince Alfred College. Named for South Australia's Chief Justice, Samuel Way, Justin was at least the fourth generation of his family to study law, which he did at Adelaide University. Justin Skipper was serving with the 10th Battalion of the Militia in the early months of the Second World War. In May 1940, he transferred to the newly formed 2nd 27th Battalion with the rank of lieutenant. After a period of training at Woodside Camp in the Adelaide Hills, he left Australia for active service overseas in October 1940. Although he was evacuated from the 2nd 27th lines a number of times with sickness, he served during the invasion of Syria and Lebanon. From mid-June 1941, the 2nd 27th took part in bitter fighting as part of the Battle of Damour. Several weeks after the armistice on the 12th of July, Skipper was again evacuated with sickness, but had served with such distinction that he'd been promoted to captain. The 2nd 27th Battalion left the Middle East in January 1942, arriving back in Adelaide in late March. 6 days later, Justin Skipper was able to serve as his brother's best man at his wedding at Scott's Church. His stay in Australia, however, was brief, and in August, Skipper's battalion was sent to Port Moresby. By early September 1942, the 2nd 27th Battalion was in a position at Mission Ridge on the Kokoda Trail, preparing to meet the Japanese advance. The battalion held on to its positions for 2 days before being forced to pull out by a Japanese outflanking move. A grim 2-week withdrawal through the jungle followed, with little food. Sick and exhausted, the 2nd 27th rejoined the main Australian force at Jawari, 40 kilometres east of Port Moresby, on the 22nd of September. After a period of rest and retraining, the 2nd 27th returned to action at Gona in late November. On the 28th, the men of the battalion spent the night lying in position in Kunigras to the southeast of Gona. They heard their neighbours, the 2nd 14th Battalion, come under heavy fire as they moved into position to their west, but they were not ordered to move themselves until the following morning. At 9 a.m. on the 29th of November, Skipper received the news that the 2nd 14th had taken so many casualties that the 2nd 27th would take over the role of advancing on Gona. The village was held by some 550 enemy squeezed into 250 square metres of space. They were well entrenched and covered by a comprehensive field of fire. The attack quickly devolved into a series of small-scale rushes on strong posts. In the process of attacking what was described as a particularly sticky post, Captain Justin Skipper was killed in action. His mate, Captain Ron Johnson, later wrote, "Justin was right on the post, urging his chaps on when he fell. He was killed instantly. He died only as the very bravest die, the only way worthy of such a gallant soldier. The bodies of many of those killed in the early days of fighting at Gona could not be recovered for some time. On the 9th of December 1942, the body of Captain Justin Skipper was found, still bearing its identification discs and paybook. His mate from Charlie Company, Captain Jack Cumming, was lying dead not far away. They were both buried in the cemetery at Gona, where Justin Skipper lies today under the simple epitaph, "The Happy Warrior." He was 28 years old. Captain Johnson wrote to Justin's parents, saying, "It is very hard to write about Justin. Words seem so inadequate. He was such a perfectly grand officer, soldier, and friend. Justin always seemed to me the perfect epitome of all a man could be." That's what everyone was lucky enough to know him always thought. Captain Justin Skipper was posthumously mentioned in dispatches for his gallant and distinguished services in the Southwest Pacific area. Since 1947, he has been commemorated by award of the Justin Skipper Prize in Law at Adelaide University, a tribute by his parents. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Captain Justin Way Skipper, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in a low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and we wish you all a very good evening.